If your mind is a garden, toxic people are the weeds. Leave them unchecked, and they'll choke every seed of greatness planted within you. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever noticed how one negative person can drain the joy from an entire room? One toxic individual, whether in your family, workplace, or social circle, can sabotage your peace, corrupt your confidence, and poison your progress. And yet, most people suffer in silence, hoping things will change. But hope is not a strategy. Intelligence is. What I'm about to share with you today is not just how to handle toxic people. It is the smartest way to deal with them without losing your dignity, your peace, or your purpose. If you've ever wondered why certain people seem to provoke your worst self, why they push your buttons, stir your emotions, or drain your drive, then stay with me. Because what you're about to learn will not only liberate you from their grip, it will elevate you toward the highest form of self-mastery. First, understand this. Toxic people survive where boundaries are absent. If you don't define the line, they'll walk all over you. Your ability to say no without guilt is your first weapon. Weak people avoid confrontation. Wise people create structure. It's not about being rude, it's about being responsible for your mental estate. Toxic people thrive where boundaries are weak. Strengthen your mental fences. This truth is not abstract. It plays out in your daily life, often in subtle and insidious ways. Imagine your mind as a house. Every time you allow someone to overstay their welcome, speak disrespectfully, or manipulate your emotions without consequence, it's as though you've left the front door wide open. Boundaries are the locks, the walls, and the alarm system of that house. Without them, anyone can enter, rearrange your furniture, steal your peace, and walk out laughing while you're left to clean up the mess. Consider a person in your life who constantly interrupts your work with negativity, complaints, or emotional drama. You've tried to be nice, you've listened, you've given them chance after chance, and yet their behavior hasn't changed, it's gotten worse. That's not because they're powerful, it's because your boundaries are invisible. You've taught them unintentionally that their dysfunction is acceptable in your presence. Now think about the same scenario, but with strong mental fences in place. The moment that person begins to drain your energy or cross the line, you communicate firmly and without apology that their behavior is not welcome. Maybe you shorten the conversation. Maybe you limit the time you spend with them. Maybe you tell them directly, "I'm not available for this kind of energy right now." And then you follow through. No arguing, no explaining, just action. That is a boundary. And every time you enforce one, you teach others how to treat you not through anger or aggression, but through clarity and consistency. Boundaries aren't just for others, they're declarations of self-respect. They are the filters that keep the garden of your mind free from weeds. You are not obligated to tolerate behavior that drains you, distracts you, or devalues you. When you let your emotional gates remain open to everyone, you invite chaos into the very space where your peace, creativity, and focus are supposed to live. The people who genuinely respect you will honor your boundaries. Those who don't were never meant to stay. Second, learn the art of emotional stillness. Toxicity thrives on reaction. When you respond with outrage, anger, or hurt, you feed the very fire you wish to extinguish. But silence? Silence is a sword of mastery. When they try to pull you into their storm, anchor yourself in calm. Speak not from emotion, but from elevation. Control your emotional reactions. Silence is power in the presence of chaos. This principle is not merely philosophical, it is intensely practical, especially in environments charged with manipulation, provocation, or emotional volatility. Emotional control is not about suppressing your feelings, it's about mastering your response. Most people react impulsively, driven by ego or wounded pride, and in doing so, they give their power away. Toxic individuals thrive on emotional bait. They provoke, instigate, and needle you until you erupt because your reaction validates their influence. The moment you lash out, they gain control. You become predictable and therefore manipulable. Imagine a workplace confrontation. A colleague, clearly threatened by your competence, begins to undermine you in a meeting. They make subtle jabs, question your decisions in front of others, or take credit for your work. Now, the untrained mind feels the surge of anger and the immediate urge to retaliate, to correct the record, defend your name, or expose their behavior. But in that moment, your reaction becomes their reward. They have pulled you out of composure and into combat. The room watches not their pettiness, but your outburst. The narrative shifts and you appear unstable, emotional, or unprofessional, even if you're right. Now consider an alternative path, the path of stillness. In the same meeting, when provoked, you remain unmoved. You meet their remarks with a composed expression, perhaps a polite nod or a brief factual correction, and then you return your focus to the work at hand. You do not defend yourself with desperation. You do not match their tone. You do not get drawn into the emotional arena, and in doing so, you flip the power dynamic. The silence unsettles them. The lack of visible reaction denies them the fuel they seek. Others in the room take notice not of drama, but of your discipline. They see maturity, not weakness. This type of emotional restraint is not passivity. It is a strategic exercise of dominance. True power is not in the loudest voice or the sharpest reply. It's in the calm presence that cannot be shaken, the unbothered mind that cannot be baited. Just as a storm rages most violently before it passes, toxic people often escalate their attacks when they sense they cannot control you. But when you respond with silence, with poise, with detachment, you reveal a deeper mastery, the kind that cannot be faked. Your restraint becomes a mirror, exposing their immaturity without you having to say a word. Third, treat toxic encounters as tests. Life will present you with people who provoke you not to break you, but to build your resilience. Don't curse the encounter. Study it. Ask yourself, what am I being trained for? Perhaps it's discipline. Perhaps it's detachment. Either way, rise above it. Toxicity is a test. See it not as a curse, but as a sharpening stone for your discipline. Life does not send toxic people to derail your journey. It sends them to reveal how far along the path of mastery you truly are. Just as steel is forged through fire and pressure, your emotional strength and mental clarity are refined through the friction of dealing with difficult individuals. The presence of toxic behavior in your life isn't always a reflection of your failure to avoid it. It's often a signal that you're being trained to rise above it. These encounters are not mistakes. They are mirrors. They show you where you are reactive instead of reflective, where you are still governed by emotion rather than by principle, and where your personal growth has room to expand. Consider a business owner who is building a dream, an enterprise born from vision, long nights, and sacrifice. Along the way, they hire a team. Among the team is one individual whose behavior is toxic, spreading gossip, resisting leadership, undermining coworkers. Every instinct within the business owner might scream to confront, to fire, to lash out. But if they act on that emotion without wisdom, they risk legal fallout, internal chaos, and a fractured team culture. Instead, the owner must navigate with calm precision. They must document issues, enforce policies without favoritism, have difficult conversations with grace, and build systems that prevent future toxicity. In the process, they're not just solving a personnel issue, they're becoming a stronger leader. The toxic employee didn't ruin the mission, they refined the mission bearer. That experience becomes the whetstone upon which the business owner sharpens their ability to lead under pressure, to hold composure, and to prioritize the vision over the impulse. Another example lies in personal relationships. Imagine someone recovering from years of people-pleasing behavior. They've begun setting boundaries, learning to say no, protecting their peace. And then along comes a partner, a friend, or even a family member who constantly disrespects those boundaries, questioning their decisions, minimizing their needs, emotionally manipulating situations to maintain control. The old self would fold. The old self would apologize, explain, and bend. But now they face the test. Will they enforce the new standard? Will they speak up without guilt? Will they walk away if necessary? The toxic person becomes the catalyst for their transformation. Every insult becomes a lesson in self-respect. Every emotional jab becomes a prompt to anchor deeper in their values. And with each encounter, their inner foundation strengthens. They're no longer just reacting to people, they're being sculpted by the very resistance they used to run from. Fourth, guard your energy like gold. The most successful individuals I've ever studied were not just wealthy in money, but wealthy in time, peace, and clarity, and they were ruthless in protecting those assets. Remember, if someone costs you your peace, they are too expensive. Never let someone's darkness dim your light. Guard your energy like a priceless treasure. Your energy is the fuel that powers your thoughts, your creativity, your ambition, your clarity. It is not infinite. Just as a bank account can be drained by constant withdrawals, so can your spirit be depleted by repeated exposure to emotional pollution. There are individuals who walk through life as carriers of chaos, not because they are evil by design, but because they are unconsciously ruled by their own unresolved pain. These people are often masters of projection. They are dissatisfied with themselves, and so they criticize your progress. They have no direction, so they mock your discipline. They lack the courage to pursue their goals, so they sabotage yours with cynicism, guilt, or subtle doubt. If you are not vigilant, their darkness seeps into your vision, their insecurities become your hesitation, and their bitterness poisons the sweetness of your momentum. Picture an artist full of passion, pouring their soul into their craft, writing, painting, building something meaningful from the depths of their heart. Then enters someone close, a friend, a partner, maybe even a mentor who carries an air of constant negativity. Every idea the artist shares is met with a sigh, a shrug, or a dismissive word. That's not realistic. No one cares about that. You should be doing something safer. At first, the artist defends the dream, but over time, the resistance wears on them. The spark that once lit up their work begins to flicker. They start to question themselves, not because the dream has changed, but because their energy has been drained by proximity to someone who cannot see the light. The darkness of that other person, rooted in fear, jealousy, or control, begins to cover the flame of potential. And if the artist does not step back, create distance, or fortify their emotional walls, that flame risks being extinguished entirely. Now consider another scenario. A woman climbing the ladder of her career with determination and purpose. She wakes up early, invests in her growth, studies, networks, prepares for her future. But at home, she is met with a partner who refuses to grow. He belittles her goals, mocks her routines, and complains that her ambition is a threat. She begins to dim her light, not out of failure, but out of guilt. She hides her success to preserve his comfort. She slows her pace to avoid confrontation. She minimizes her wins so he doesn't feel inadequate. What she doesn't realize is that she's giving away her energy bit by bit to someone who isn't adding to her journey, only subtracting from it. In moments like these, the most dangerous form of darkness is not outright abuse, but the subtle erosion of confidence that occurs when you surround yourself with someone who resents your brightness because it reminds them of their own unhealed wounds. Fifth, withdraw your attention. Toxic people crave significance. When you deny them the satisfaction of your reaction, they shrivel. Don't argue. Don't explain. Don't defend. Master the sacred power of indifference. It is not apathy, it is elevation. Withdraw your attention and you withdraw their influence. Indifference is mightier than confrontation. The human ego thrives on acknowledgement, whether in the form of praise or resistance. It feeds off recognition. Toxic individuals, especially those who seek control or validation through manipulation, know this deeply, even if unconsciously. They provoke reactions because reactions signal power. If they can upset you, they feel important. If they can make you explain, defend, or retaliate, they know they occupy space in your mind. What they fear most is not your anger, but your indifference. Your refusal to play their game, to even sit at the same emotional table, renders them powerless. When you stop responding to every jab, every guilt trip, every attempt to stir conflict, you don't just end the conversation, you dissolve the invisible strings they've used to pull at your sense of identity. Imagine a workplace scenario where one colleague consistently tries to undermine another. The aggressor throws passive-aggressive comments in meetings, questions decisions in front of others, and spreads subtle rumors behind the scenes. The natural instinct is to defend oneself, to respond, to engage in a verbal sparring match. But the wise employee takes another route. Instead of fighting back, they simply stop giving the aggressor any emotional reaction. When the snide remark is made, they acknowledge it with a calm nod or a redirect to the task at hand. When confronted, they respond only with professionalism and brevity. No anger, no fluster, no energy spent beyond what's necessary. Over time, the toxic colleague begins to lose their grip, not because they were silenced, but because their words became irrelevant. Without the reward of reaction, their behavior begins to expose itself. Their influence diminishes not through battle, but through disinterest. Or think of a former friend or partner who attempts to pull you back into old cycles of drama after you've chosen to grow. They may send antagonistic messages, post cryptic attacks online, or play the victim to mutual acquaintances. These are traps designed to re-engage you emotionally. Every time you take the bait defending your name, clarifying your side, or lashing out, you reattach the thread of connection. But the moment you stop responding, stop explaining, and stop acknowledging, their power begins to evaporate. They may escalate at first, desperate for the reaction they used to provoke, but when met with consistent silence, they are left to sit in their own echo chamber. Your refusal to participate becomes a mirror reflecting their irrelevance. You are not punishing them, you are preserving yourself. In that space of indifference, you reclaim the emotional bandwidth that was once hijacked by someone else's chaos. Finally, understand this universal truth. You cannot walk into your future if you're dragging the weight of toxic relationships behind you. Let go. Cut the cord. Build the wall. Success requires a clean runway. Don't let their dysfunction delay your destiny. Success demands a clear path. Remove the emotional clutter or your destiny will be delayed. Every great ambition requires focus, and focus cannot survive in a mind congested with unprocessed emotions, unresolved conflicts, and toxic attachments. Emotional clutter is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it masquerades as loyalty to people who drain you or as guilt for outgrowing the environment you were born into. It shows up in the form of inner dialogue that second-guesses every decision, doubts every instinct, and hesitates at every opportunity. This kind of mental congestion slows progress, not because the goal has changed, but because the path toward it is littered with emotional debris, resentments, fears, obligations, and distractions that dilute your energy and fragment your attention. Success isn't just about having the right strategy, it's about having the emotional clarity to execute it without hesitation. Consider the example of an entrepreneur with a bold vision. Perhaps they've launched a startup with potential to impact thousands. They've invested time, capital, and passion into this idea, but behind the scenes they're carrying a weight. Unresolved trauma from a childhood where failure was mocked, a toxic relationship where their dreams were dismissed, and the constant guilt of distancing from a peer group that has remained stagnant. Each time a challenge arises in their business, those emotional burdens speak louder than logic. Instead of taking bold steps, they hesitate. Instead of pitching to investors with confidence, they shrink back, worried about rejection. Instead of focusing fully on growth, they spend energy managing the emotional fallout of keeping people close who no longer belong on the journey. The business doesn't fail because the idea is flawed, it falters because the visionary is emotionally entangled in fears and dynamics that rob them of presence and clarity. Or imagine a student with immense potential, preparing for medical school, law school, or a high-level exam. They have the intellect, the discipline, the drive, but at home they are constantly pulled into family disputes, emotional manipulation from a parent who feels abandoned, or the guilt of succeeding where others have not. Every time they sit to study, their mind drifts to conflict. Every time they think about the future, their progress is tinged with shame. They start to underperform, not because they lack capability, but because their emotional bandwidth is consumed by things that should have been cleared long ago. The weight they carry is invisible to others, but it slows their steps all the same. They try to multitask their way to success, balancing chaos and excellence, but it never works. Emotional clutter is like static noise in a radio transmission. The signal may still be broadcasting, but the message gets distorted, delayed, or lost altogether. In the pursuit of a life marked by purpose, peace, and achievement, the way you handle toxic people is not just a matter of survival. It is a measure of your self-mastery. You were not born to be a sponge for other people's pain, nor a canvas for their projections. You were born to create, to lead, to rise, and that requires clarity. That requires strength. That requires the courage to say no without apology, to withdraw without guilt, and to protect your energy as fiercely as you protect your goals. Remember this: Not every battle is worth fighting, not every critic deserves a response, and not every connection is meant to continue. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is not to defeat them, it's to transcend them. Because when you choose peace over provocation, purpose over distraction, and power over reaction, you don't just win, you evolve. And evolution is the ultimate victory. In closing, I say this to you. You were not born to carry other people's chaos. You were born to create, to build, to lead, to succeed. And that journey demands clarity. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is not through force or fury, it is through focus. Let them play small while you rise tall. Remember, no one can poison your path unless you hand them the pen to write your story. Now take back your power.